I prepared a talk for today, and when I was sort of getting it ready, I was thinking, oh, it's Mothering Sunday, it'll be a Mothering Sunday talk, but to be quite honest, it isn't really. So you might be relieved to know that. But it's just what it is, what it is. So we're going to look at a really well-known story, which is that of Mary and Martha. And you know, Mary and Martha, they were people. They lived with their brother Lazarus as well. And we know from John 11 verse 5 that these people were very dear and close to Jesus, because in John 11 verse 5 it says, now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So they're people that he really loved. And we know that Jesus went to visit their home. You know, there's at least 2 occasions mentioned in the Bible, but it's probably one of those homes that he visited, you know, where he just felt comfortable, where he felt welcomed. And it's described as Martha's home. So I was reading about that, and it said apparently that sort of suggests that she was a widow, that Martha was a widow, and so the house belonged to Martha. And I think they were siblings, weren't they, that were living in that house. So if you've got your Bibles, the story's in Luke 10. And I bet most of you jumped ahead of me anyway while I was looking at what you were doing. And it's verses 38 to 42. I got myself a bit muddled up because I looked at my paper and it said John 10. And I thought, oh, I don't think it's in John. It's not, it's in Luke. So Luke 10, verses 38 to 42. And it says this: as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary, who sat at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me. Martha, Martha, the Lord answered, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. So this is one of those stories. It's very short, isn't it? The little clip, like if you like, the little clip that we get. And it's one of those stories where you kind of always see yourself in it somewhere, don't you? You identify with one or other of those characters. You know, it's yeah, we always look at it. It's a bit like a mirror looking in at yourself, isn't it? But I'm not really asking you to decide whether you're a Mary or a Martha today. And if you're a guy, you might be relieved about that. But yeah, what I want to look at today, what I really felt that the Lord was saying was, what does Jesus want to say to us today? You know, because he says, Martha, Martha, and then he says something to her. And it's like, what might he be saying if instead of Martha's name, he was saying your name? What might he be saying to you afterwards? But let's have a look at the characters in the story. We'll start with Mary. So we know she wasn't helping her sister. So what was she doing? Well, she was sitting at the Lord's feet, listening to what he said. And, you know, we're quite a long way from the original context of this story. So we might miss what that little phrase, sitting at the Lord's feet, actually means, because to sit at somebody's feet like that was actually about learning from the master. It was like being a disciple at the feet of the master, and it was about giving Jesus her undivided attention and recognizing that, you know, in Jesus here was somebody who's got something really important to teach me, and something that I can learn from him. And it's actually the posture of a student with their respected teacher. We know that the Apostle Paul, for example, was said to have been brought up at the feet of Gamaliel. So it doesn't mean he literally was brought up by Gamaliel, but it means that he had a very close mentor-disciple type relationship. And this is what you see here with Jesus and Mary. I guess it was unusual because, you know, it's actually the first example you have of a woman who is being discipled by Jesus in that way. And the thing about Mary was that she was at peace, she was at rest, and she was giving Jesus her complete, focused, undivided attention. And it struck me that, sometimes when we do that as Christians, if we are really focused on Jesus, if we're really giving him all our attention, it tends to really annoy and provoke people around us, especially in our families, and especially if we have non-Christian members of our families. They don't understand what this obsession in their mind, obsession, it's not really an obsession, is it? But what is this that why are we giving Jesus all this attention? And in the past, we've seen it where families arrange things on a Sunday morning when they know that their loved one really wants to be in church, but they deliberately arrange something so that they're taking them away from church. And little things like that we've seen happen over the years. Someone once told me, and it's not anybody in our church, by the way, so I'll just tell you that now, but they once said to me, "Oh, you can't pursue, you can't pursue a calling in God. You're a wife and a mother. You can't do that." And they kind of were saying to me, "No, you can't follow God's call." Because actually they weren't really following God's call at that point, and they didn't like seeing me doing it because it made them feel bad, and they were putting up the barriers, the reason why I couldn't rather than the reason why I could. And yes, it is right that our families are our responsibility and need to be a priority, because they're a God-given responsibility. But we also need to remember that the first commandment is, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And so, Jesus said, that law, that and loving others, summed up all the law. So we have got to make Jesus our priority. And that's what Mary was doing. She was making Jesus her priority. So how about Martha? Well, Martha, by contrast, was distracted. And the ESV version of the Bible describes her as being distracted with much serving. And, if you're distracted, it means your thoughts and your attention are kind of drawn away somewhere else. So you can't concentrate and give your attention to what you should be giving your attention to. And we need to kind of understand where Martha's coming from, because actually to serve is good. It's a good desire to want to serve. Opening up her home to Jesus is good. And that's quite a big deal, isn't it? Because it wasn't just Jesus she opened her home to. She opened her home to his disciples. So suddenly, you've got a household of 3, and suddenly you've got 12 extras for dinner. That is a bit shocking, isn't it? I don't know how many of you sitting there might be having a bit of a panic if you suddenly thought you've got 15 people to feed instead of the 3 you thought you were going to feed. You might be thinking, oh my goodness, have I got enough this? Have I got enough that? And that's where Martha was. She was in this place of, and so the problem with Martha was not that she wanted to serve, but that she was distracted by serving. The serving was not having a good effect on her. Okay, the serving was causing her to be having a bit of a hissy fit, really. She was having a bit of a panic about it all, because she was distracted by all the jobs that needed doing, rather than the reason why those jobs needed doing, which was the person that had come into her home, and she was there to welcome. So in her, if you like, in her desire to make Jesus welcome, she was actually making him feel unwelcome, because she was so busy thinking about what she needed to do and what must be done, and why was nobody else helping her. We have somebody in our family, and they'll smile when they hear it, but she used to say, "Will somebody do this job now?" And it was like, there's nobody recognizing how hard I'm working here all by myself. But really, it's about presence, isn't it? We need to be prioritizing presence over what we are needing to do. And that's why Martha was angry with her sister, because Mary seemed oblivious to what needed to be done. And so she's like, "Come on, Jesus, back me up here. Justify my anger." And I just thought, well, aren't we all like Martha sometimes? We get irritated by people who are focusing on Jesus, because they switch their focus, haven't they? From we'd rather it was on something more sort of normal, and in a sense, there they are focusing on something we can't really see, and yeah, it can irritate us. And actually, Martha needed to focus first and foremost on making Jesus feel welcome. And I hope family will forgive me for this, but when children were younger, we used to go and visit the family, the different parents, and we'd arrive at one house and they'd be really pleased to see us, and would you like a drink, would you like a little snack, and just sit down and have a chat with us, and they just really make you welcome. And then we'd been in the car for hours, whichever set of parents we were visiting, and then the other set of parents, it would be, dinner's ready, what time did you leave? And it just, the effect was that you didn't feel welcome. And actually, that wasn't the intention, because the intention was, I want you to feel welcome. I've made you a really nice dinner. And that's the difference between the Mary way and the Martha way, because I think that Mary would have got round to helping with the dinner in time. But first and foremost, she wanted to say, hey, Jesus, it's so lovely to be with you and see you. I'm so glad you're in our home, and so that's what we need to sort of think about ourselves, check ourselves if we find ourselves going the Martha rather than the Mary way. Now, how about Jesus? How did he deal with the situation? Well, first of all, he refused to validate Martha's complaint. Rather than telling Mary off, he actually corrected Martha, didn't he? And then he addressed Martha really sympathetically. And I like this. He wasn't unkind to Martha in the way that he corrected her. He just kind of put his finger on what the issue was. And also, he did it in such a personal way. So he says her name, Martha. Martha, you're anxious and troubled about many things. And the NIV says you're worried and upset about many things. So he names the problem, you're anxious, as well as naming her. And I think, the really personal and loving way in which he did it, I think that would have really touched her. And I think this is the point here today. We have a personal Lord. He addresses us personally. He doesn't promise to agree with us, and he doesn't promise to validate our wrong thinking or our prideful indignation. Don't you think it's wrong that this person's doing this? He doesn't validate all that stuff. He just cuts through all of that, doesn't he? But what he does promise is he promises to know us and to really relate to us as a father, a really loving father. So just for a moment, why don't you just close your eyes a minute, and then imagine now, Jesus isn't saying Martha, Martha. He's calling your name. He's saying, Stella, Stella, or he's saying Elaine, Elaine, or Alan, Alan. What he's speaking to you. And I just want, we're going to just have a minute silence there, just a moment of silence. And the question is, what does Jesus want to say to you? What does he want to challenge or address in you, like he challenged Martha's anxiety? Or what does he want to recognize or praise or commend in you, like he commended Mary, what she was doing in sitting at his feet? And while you're sitting there with your eyes closed, ask the Lord, is there an activity that I am doing right now which is distracting me from you? In my daily life, what am I doing that is maybe distracting me from the main thing? Is there something, Jesus, that you want me to stop? Is there something, Jesus, that you want me to let go of? Is there someone that I have been condemning who Jesus doesn't condemn? And perhaps right now, you just need to ask Jesus for some right perspective in your life. And like Mary, let's just quiet ourselves and just sit at his feet for another moment. And perhaps as well, do we need to find space away from the people that distract us, or maybe even away from the phones that distract us, or the voices that constantly compete for our attention? It might be social media, it might be the TV, it might be a neighbour that's always knocking on your door. What can you do to find some space to hear from Jesus? Could you switch off your phone for a day? Because, guess what? The world won't stop if you do. But you might discover that you feel a whole lot better. And maybe Jesus is asking you, would you give me the courtesy of giving me your full attention? Stop and listen to what he has to say. Jesus told Martha only one thing is required. So ask Jesus, what one thing does he require of you today? So you can open your eyes again. I just really praying there that Jesus be speaking to you. Finally, just want to say, if you are a mother, I just want to tell you, you don't have to be in the Mary or the Martha camp. Because actually, we're not really meant to be either or, are we? There are times when Martha is right, and there are jobs that need to be done, and we need to get on with them, aren't there? And let's face it, who would prepare the meal if Martha didn't prepare the meal? Somebody has to prepare the meal. But there are also times, especially for mothers, times to recognise that you need to stop. And I guess it's more young mothers need to do this particularly, don't they? But there are times where all of us need to just actually, whether you're a father as well, you need to find time just to be quiet and simply to rest, because constant activity isn't good, and neither is constant inactivity. We just need a balance in our lives, don't we? And I think maybe that's something for you to think about as well. What is the balance like in my life? Is there too much rest and not enough work, or is there too much work and not enough rest? And maybe Jesus wants to speak into that to you today as well. Okay, so I hope that's encouraged you. I hope that's blessed you. I hope that Jesus has spoken to you this morning. I hope nobody's feeling condemned. Remember, there's now no condemnation for those that are in Christ Jesus. All Jesus tries to do, all Jesus does, is get us back into balance. He corrects us, doesn't he? When we tip the wrong way slightly, he just puts us back online and no, this is the way I want you to go.